So here with Wilmar at the site of DC HUX, 3 Washington Circle, Suite 305. Seeing here, we're standing in front of their new lobby, main entrance. We're on the 3rd floor right now. DC HUX's current practice, I think we talked about this in the last video, is currently they have an admin area on the 2nd floor of this building in 3 Washington, and then a clinic on 19th Street. So the purpose of this facility that we're building for them, 5,000 square feet on the 3rd floor of the building, is gonna be 2 operating rooms and 1 procedure room for their new hand surgery center, which is gonna get, which already has a certificate of need and is gonna be classified as an ambulatory surgical center, one of the very few that actually exist in DC. So pretty difficult getting this far. So this area, as you can see, pretty much done. They already have their computers and some furniture coming in. So slowly we're gonna take off all the wall and ceiling protection. But something that we're probably gonna talk about in depth right now is the results of the last inspection from Department of Health, who came, I think, about 2 weeks ago.
2 weeks ago.
So DOH came by, because Department of Building, we passed their final inspections months ago. Then the surgeon and their team brought all their equipment in, kind of got all their medical equipment, merch, all that stuff in.
Fire marshal inspection also went well.
Fire marshal, that came at the very end. And I guess we got the occupancy, the building occupancy,
yes.
But the doctor cannot actually practice here, especially with the Medicare guidelines, federally regulated, the certificate of need, that's District of Columbia regulated. A lot of paperwork on his end. So after we got this occupancy months ago, Dr. Shar, all his team submitted all the paperwork. Finally, 2 weeks ago, Department of Health came in, gave a, looks like 6-page report on a lot of deficiencies. A lot of homework for the doctor's team. For us, unfortunately, 1 or 2 of the deficiencies are related to design. And what basically happened is FGI guidelines, Federal Guideline Institute, which is pretty much covers all the design and construction requirements for an ambulatory surgical center, dictates that there's a lot of gray area. Nothing is very like black and white with FGI, I think we're unfortunately learning, but generally recommended operating rooms are 250 square feet.
270.
270 square feet. What did we end up having on the original design?
We had 240 and 1 and 245 at second OR.
And did that include like countertop space and stuff like that?
No, that was them deducting. That was them deducting all countertop cabinet area. It was just actually the usable space is what they measured.
Okay,
yes.
And we had how much usable square feet?
240 and 245.
Okay. So basically off by about 20 to 30 square feet in each operatory. And it also pretty much killed the idea of being able to eventually convert the procedure room to a future operatory, because a procedure room, I think, is only 170 square feet required.
That is correct.
Which we're above that, but that's far below the 270 needed for an operatory room. So that was a big, as far as inspection deficiencies, especially given that it wasn't even a building inspection. I don't think that there's been a more kind of disappointing inspection result to get from the standpoint of both the doctor's team and us, because this project, I mean, this is a very big collaborative effort, and we're going to be meeting up with Dr. Shar and his team at some point in this video, because it's basically, I believe as of right now, 2025, there are only 6 ambulatory surgical centers in DC that are private practices that also have a certificate of need to do work under Medicare. So we are like one of now 7 trying to accomplish this task of building an ambulatory surgical center in a district that has very few of these built every decade, let alone every year. And with the 2020 guidelines update for both NFPA and everything else, a lot of various governing bodies, code enforcement agencies, work like that would basically be studying this building on top of the regular inspections that you deal with from DC Department of Buildings. All that to say that it was a very unique project. There's a lot more than just building inspections. Once we're done, we stay on board to help work with the doctor to remediate any concerns that might come from any government bodies that deal with the Medicare side, approvals for Department of Health, fire marshal, like you mentioned, and anyone else that has anything to do with surgical care in the District of Columbia. So I guess this is the easiest place to talk about, because luckily the inspections went fine here. You have your main entrance, a single swinging door coming from the building lobby where the elevators are. And then on that side would be the side entrance that patients can use, I guess, if there's any or staff can use. And for any emergencies with patients journeys, there are 2 side entrances that are supposed to be used for emergency situations. You wouldn't be bringing in a stretcher or anything through this main area.
No, it would have to go to a service entrance, which is on the outside of the street.
Perfect. I guess we'll start by swinging by maybe around here to the admin side. So right here, we're approaching the staff lounge. Kept this one open because really patients should not be able to walk into here anyway, because where we just were, walked in from the reception is basically a key fob door.
It's a key fob door.
Yeah, so
actually all 3 doors in there are key fob operated.
Got it. So yeah, patients would go into the waiting room from the hallway, and then a nurse would let them into their operating room. They should not be coming here. So to keep this space a little more open, because that was key. You can tell from the previous footage of how this building was before, low ceilings. I believe 7 foot tall were the existing ceilings, and 5,000 square feet for a facility that has 2 operating rooms, 5 peri-op beds?
5 peri-op.
5 peri-op beds and 1 procedure room. You got to be a little creative with the sizing of it. So the less doors and I guess low ceilings and kind of like anything that can evoke that claustrophobic feeling, the better. So maximizing the space. This is going to be the lounge room. As you can see, we're starting to get some major furniture deliveries and gotta need to do a lot of organizing, but this area is pretty much completely done. You'll have the female locker room, laundry room, men's locker room, restroom that we just passed. And then this is the heart of the admin area. So we have our water heater, 2 5-ton HVAC heat pumps, and then that big guy is our surgical vacuum, dual tank for basically all the peri-op bays and the 2 ORs and the procedure room all get surgical suction. So that's the biggest vacuum we've seen, like 10 times. Usually what you'll see for like a dental office is probably gonna be the size of this. And vice versa, that's your little compressor for this room because there's the only areas that get compressed air is just the sterile tools. That's where the hand pistols are.
And the washer, the doors are pneumatic and it needs air to open and close the
washer. Yeah. So giant surgical tank, giant surgical vacuum, tiny air compressor. Pretty much the opposite of what we see on a dental project. So that's what made the hand surgery design a little interesting compared to the oral surgery offices we usually do. And then we have the medical gas closet. Makes sense that it would be locked. Definitely, this would, I guess, be I should say, the heart of the actual surgery center. We only have a couple tanks in here right now for testing purposes. So you have your compressed gas, specifically oxygen tanks here. You have your medical air tanks here. Like we said, the only compressed air was from that little compressor that we saw because it's actually medical air for a hand surgery facility that would be needed for basically patients who are under, patients who are coming to after their surgery, being in the post-op bays or the PACU beds. Need to, especially for younger patients, you need to supplement any oxygen with medical air, basically get a mix to make it a little safer for younger or more sensitive, susceptible patients to various illnesses. So pretty interesting. This was all Allied Med Gas. You have, they installed all the TriTech equipment, tanks from Roberts Oxygen, but it was Allied Med Gas that kind of was the quarterback to designing and speccing all these components, including stuff that would be serving existing medical equipment, because the anesthesia carts and other various equipment is coming from the other clinic on 19th Street. So a lot of work to essentially marry the new with the old while keeping everything code compliant. And as we mentioned in the beginning, a lot of different governing bodies, but the main big ones to look out for are FGI guidelines and an NFPA 99, which was updated in 2020. So kind of recent, especially after COVID. You can imagine there was a lot of different requirements for everything being HEPA filtered, kind of like, eliminating the risk of contaminants, but also for the safety of patients who wouldn't be able to self-preserve in the event of an emergency if they're knocked out. Then there's a lot of other things or requirements, I should say, that come into play, because that what I guess makes an ambulatory surgical center different than an outpatient facility is an ambulatory surgical center has at least 4 peri-op beds where at any given time, 4 patients could be knocked out and not capable of self-preserving, so saving themselves in a fire, having to get up and walk out. That's what gets us to the ASC level, and all the other requirements come in. So basically, if you're watching this and you are considering building an ASC or any kind of outpatient facility that's gonna do surgery involving deep sedation, definitely talk to some consultants, because this is not like building an oral surgery. It's not like even doing a Category 1 facility, especially in DC, Northern Virginia, Maryland, that have very, I would say, thorough Department of Health inspectors. It's something that you do it once. I don't think I'll ever forget any of these rules again, but like I said, there's only 6 of these that exist now in DC. So you're taking on a challenge like this, you'll definitely have some interesting hurdles, but end of the day, it's amazing that, with all the deficiencies that could have happened, there was only one item that affected design and construction, and the rest was basically stuff for the medical team to just take note of for their emergency plans, making sure there's no expired merch or tools and stuff like that. So we'll definitely get into the Department of Health report once we get to the operating rooms, which is going to be right behind us. So that'll be a little exciting to get into the specifics here. We're good with that. This is the easiest one. So this is going to be our procedure room. As I mentioned, this was originally designed to be easily converted to an operatory room. And really the only thing about it that wouldn't be recommended right now would just be the square footage of the room and the fact that it has the same LVT that's in the hallway. So in case that's still the plan in the future, to make it as easy as possible, we are putting a 4-foot wide lead door, as would be required of the other operatories. This would, even after we do a sheet vinyl flooring, it still would not be large enough to be an operatory room, but you can basically just extend exactly where you're standing now, push this all the way to the other side of the hallway, have a much bigger procedure room. Should that be desired, you would just have to find a different place to have the quiet room that's in there. So it's definitely possible, but what really, I guess, is the big work that we're doing here. You can see that we tarped off where the 2 operating rooms are. These are the 2 rooms that originally were 240 usable square feet. We have already pushed out the walls to where they are now, lining up with this existing wall to make them 200, actually more than 270. On the design, we actually have the new design, 287 square feet. So these are the new walls that we put in. So it shrunk the hallway to now 7 feet wide, which is still okay because it's not smaller than the width of the double doors, the clearances that we already have for like a gurney that would not fit through a 3-foot wide door. So 7-foot hallway still good. And most importantly, now we have way more than the 270 minimum required usable square feet. We're close to 290 now. So in case they don't count like the space for where the anesthesia cart is, we'll still be good. So let's walk in here. Guys been working pretty much non-stop for a week now because this was a unexpected decision from the doctor to meet the FGI guidelines and say, even though we just built, we finished, we got final inspections and occupancy months ago, it was ready to be operated, and he decided that, for the purposes of course, approval with Medicare, that board and any other agencies, best to get beyond just recommended levels and get to as good as you can. So we've took out all the cabinets that we'd already had installed here, pushed them to the side. We might do new cabinets. We're thinking of the idea of taking this opportunity to do stainless steel cabinetry. That's an idea. What we're definitely gonna do is just replace all this existing LVT with sheet vinyl, because with all the work that we're doing, taking out cabinets, we might as well. We're also gonna take the opportunity to eventually replace this sub panel with an isolation panel. So I'm excited to see that in the next video, because this is basically should be a 16 pull.
Turn the other way.
Nice. So yeah, we have 18 space 120 panel, this should be, which is healthcare grade, but what would make an isolation panel different is it literally will isolate the circuits that this panel feeds, so to all the outlets and surgical light here, isolates it from the building's grounding. So if there is a voltage drop, power outage, even though we have the UPS battery, we have a lot of redundancies in place, this would be one other level where it would be close to impossible to ever have a shock risk or an electrocution risk. If you think like surgery, you're opening up bodies, you have technically a conductive liquid that is blood all over the place. That can conduct electricity, and that would be considered a major electrical risk should the grounding system be compromised in any way. So we're gonna take the opportunity, if we're demoing a wall, taking the cabinets, we're just gonna redo all these things. We're still gonna keep this nice, expensive surgical light that we already have here. And the med gas outlets, thankfully, are on that wall there, so those didn't get impacted by the enlarging of the rooms.
And the ceiling.
And the ceiling.
For the anesthesia machine.
Exactly. So we pretty much gave a very cost-effective, value-engineered solution to the doctor to, hey, I know it sucks that you built this and pretty much were ready to see patients months ago, but we can, instead of appealing to the Department of Health and saying that, you know, we can't possibly make the building larger, so how can we make the ORs bigger? We came up with a really good compromise that allows us to still have 2 operatory rooms, state-of-the-art, can't get better than, you know, sheet vinyl flooring, isolation sub panel, and you already have the surgical grade lighting here. So the only compromise really the doctor has to make on his side is keeping the procedure room that we looked at first. Just keep it, it'll probably stay as a procedure room unless he makes the decision to later expand that room as well. But that's pretty much the solution we came up with. They're currently shaving down the lead doors right now, which are hundreds of pounds, I think 100 pounds per square foot each, so very, very heavy. This is a welded hollow metal frame, and once this door gets hung up, we blanked off these hinges here because instead of the typical 5-knuckle hinge, 3 hinges, we're gonna have a continuous piano hinge. So that'll be exciting to see once it's done. Now we'll go to that last operatory room behind us. So, same thing here. We're gonna replace the panel with an isolation panel. This is OR number 2, as it's labeled there. So same deal. Luckily, everything here is gonna remain as is. All we have to do is protect all the existing equipment. And then where you're standing right now, Ethan, that's gonna be the new cabinets. Again, gonna do all new flooring in this room as well. Take that opportunity to do heat welded seams with resilient sheet vinyl flooring. That's pretty much state-of-the-art for a surgical center. So we should probably be wrapped up, I would say, in a week now. We should have these sinks, the new countertops, and the sheet vinyl flooring. Is there anything else that we'd need to button this up?
No. That's pretty much it.
So all in all, we started work a week ago. So 1 week left. That's 2 weeks to essentially take a functional operatory room and make it larger and put everything back to the way it was so they can start, you know, scheduling patients. Pretty incredible.
It is.
2 weeks.
It's definitely incredible.
With the fact that the entire project was originally going to take 3 months, 2 weeks to make 2 finished operators bigger.
Taking in consideration there was plumbing, electrical, framing, drywall, you know, pretty much all of the trades involved in every wall that we move. So it's definitely incredible that we'll be able to get this done in 3 weeks.
Exactly. So that's going to be great. Now for the more minor stuff, they actually never finished the medical staff putting all the equipment in place for the peri-op areas and nurse station areas. So it's a little crowded, but I think it's worth taking a look, and we'll just talk about, you know, some of the interesting challenges.
Absolutely.
Wilmar, you face. You lead the way.
Absolutely.
I guess we'll check out the sterile or decontam area first.
We can go through decontamination room first.
All right.
So what we have here is just it's what they call a washer, and this is where they're gonna bring the instruments and give their first cycle of wash. Mm-hmm. So, well, it's actually the second one, because first they're gonna go through the sink.
3-basin sink.
Yeah, 3-basin sink, and then once they do their work in here, it's gonna go through the pass-through washer, which was a challenge to get here. It's definitely wider than all of our doors here, and it weighs like 2,000 pounds as well. So to bring it up here was a huge challenge. We had doors and door frames installed at the time it was brought to site, so it was a lot of work. involved to be able to get it here. But we were able to, get it here successfully, and it's, it's been tested. We have the report. Everything works fine, and I'm not sure if doctor has done any testing yet, but as far as the equipment company, Steris, they have done multiple tests, and it's just, it's, as you can see on the screen, is on standby.
You mentioned that the first test you guys did, I guess we did a 3-inch drain, and it even one test in it like basically flooded the.
Yeah, very interesting. So it was a great area as well. When we looked at the specs, and it called somewhere in the specs said called for 1.5-inch drain. Mm-hmm. So we went 1/2 inch larger. So we installed a 2-inch drain. So when we were installing it, the guys, the technicians were like, no, that's not gonna work. It's gotta be a minimum of 4 inches, right? But the same situation that we have ceiling constraints downstairs as well. It's only a few inches that we had to play with downstairs to run all the piping and stuff. So we were able to manage as well after a lot of work and issues, modifications to the downstairs as well to be able to run a 3-inch drain line to it, and then once we did that, it worked just perfectly.
Nothing really came easy on this.
No, honestly, this was a very challenging project. We went through a lot of our roadblocks, along the way, but nothing that we weren't able to solve.
Yeah, definitely thanks to the Steris team and everyone.
Definitely, they were awesome to work with. Technicians, they were awesome to work with. They were here, I believe, more than what they expected to be here, just because of the conditions of the space and the issues that we faced.
It's kind of interesting that Dr. Shar's existing office being right below us. Anytime something happens with a core drill issue, we kind of got to ask him to.
Well, that part was really easy. It was really nice for everybody because we didn't have to get into legal aspects of asking for permission, working after hours to be able to core drill. I think that part made all the difficulties easier, I'll say, just because we were able to just run downstairs, talk to them, and they would just move out of the way for us to, get done whatever needed to be done.
Especially with how small of a building, or suite, I should say, but how big of a building. So there's medical tenants, residential tenants. The board who owns this building also lives and works here. So I think that was a blessing in disguise.
Absolutely.
We did have a hand surgeon below us, but it was Dr. Shara Shemi. So that definitely made coordination a lot easier. And
absolutely,
it's easy to ask for, hey, can we core drill tonight and drill through your ceiling when it's your grand opening day that we'll be able to push sooner by doing so same day.
No, that was definitely fantastic.
A lot of challenges, but quick solutions.
Quick solutions, yes, yeah. That was key to be able to get this project to where we are right now.
Perfect. What is this little area here? I guess.
So this little area here, these are the chemicals that the washer uses. So they would they're connected to a pump system. That will pump all those chemicals into the washer, that they go up and across the ceiling, down back into the washer here.
Oh, interesting.
Yes. And so that was also a big challenge because the specs of this unit did not show the chemical pump, right? So when they came and they dropped this off, they asked me, where's the location for the pump and the chemicals? And I didn't even know what they were talking about because it was obviously not in the specs. So we looked at it and we talked about different places to install it. But at the end of the day, this was the best and most effective spot to install this stuff.
It's interesting that just this room, we've talked about 3 pieces of specialty medical equipment: a 3-basin decontam sink, a pass-through instrument washer, and your chemical filtration system. We haven't even gotten to the water deionizer, the biohazard closet. Just these 3 components, the amount of coordination, problem solving, installing, then to find out there is still incompatibility issues, I think really drives home the point that whatever kind of specialty surgeon, dentist, doctor, specialist care that you provide, it is paramount that to understand that the contractor, the architect, even the consultants who specialize in your specific medical field can't read your mind when it comes to doctors' preferences, the staffs, the assistants, the patients, all these things. I wish there was only one type of sterilizer, one type of instrument washer, one type of decontamination system that works for all, even just hand surgeons. But no, there's many different options.
All kinds of options, yes.
And all FGI tells you is really what you can't do.
Yes.
So for this sink, for example, we knew that it had to have, I guess, first is the option of, FGI will ask, do you have a separate clean and dirty side? You technically can have exemptions to have sterile and decontam be in the same room, but you'd have to express that there's limitations that require that. For us, we didn't have enough space to separate clean and dirty, and then this little pass-through system was pretty creative to make the most use of these two rooms kind of on one on the other side. While we talk about it, actually, this pass-through, this is a thing that was added last minute. So for the trays, you don't want to only rely on the washer to pass things back and forth. So we did add a sliding window once we had to install this behemoth of an instrument washer. We figured, as convenient as that is, also give them this opening. But it begs the question of, because we separate clean and dirty, we're definitely going to need positive pressure in a dirty, negative pressure on the dirty side to keep any decontaminated air particles stay here and just get filtered out through the return grills in the ceiling. Which means we definitely need to make sure that even the returns are balanced perfectly for essentially make sure air that comes out immediately gets filtered back in the return. But we also need to seal any points of leakage. So for example, this pass-through washer, any penetrations, this sliding glass we are gonna have to add gaskets and whatnot, because once we calibrate that positive and negative pressure, so negative here, and on the clean side we'll have positive pressure, we're going to have to get air balancing, and hopefully if everything is calibrated, I think it's called the pressure differential, once that's achieved and we confirm that we have the number of, I think it's 21 air exchanges per hour, if that's good, then we're good to go. But if there's any issues, we probably will first start with, where could air be escaping? Where could the units be suffocating? How could we increase air supply to meet the positive pressure needs and the number of air exchanges per hour, while also making sure the returns are properly filtering that air and also creating negative air pressures in the dirty areas and positive air pressures in clean. So interesting challenge, pretty big consideration to take during the design phase, but it doesn't end there. Design CFMs, design calculations, exactly that, it's design. The actual results are way different. That's why we have third-party certified tab vendors who are outside so we have 3 just vendors, I think, just for the HVAC system. We of course have our engineer of record, our mechanical designer, then Llama engineers, shout out to them. We have Hava Tech, that's the manufacturer and distributor for most of the HVAC equipment.
Most of the HVAC equipment that we have in here, BAB boxes.
Yep.
And 3 of our temporary heat pump, the permanent heat pump, and the one for the electrical room as well.
Gotcha. Yeah. So I guess they work, Halftech works with Bosch and Daikin, which are the permanent and temporary, respectively, manufacturers of our HVAC system. So that was a whole deal as well, because the size of the space, the requirements for ventilation, air exchanges per hour, and positive pressure, as well as the ceiling limitations, which means you can only get a certain size duct,
that is correct.
Small VAVs. That basically led to only one manufacturer who could deliver all the specs. Because once it gets really granular about it, you're talking about ESP, external static pressure, which is how much, I guess the easiest way to explain it is the air resistance that the airflow from the unit receives by the time it comes out the vent. You're not going to get the same CFM from the unit. That it was only Bosch that was like, we have a unit that could meet this, but it's got to be custom fab. Takes 16 weeks. Now this job needing to be done in 3 months. It's actually still in fabrication now. So we're also taking the opportunity that we did install a temporary Daikin unit to serve cold air to the operating rooms while the permanent Bosch unit was getting built. But at this point, if we're doing all this work anyway, we might be able to replace that Bosch unit a little sooner than we think while we're already mobilized here.
Hopefully it goes that way.
Yeah, so that way, once the ORs are bigger, we hopefully not have to shut this down for any reason because we already had a planned shutdown for Christmas for when that Bosch unit was supposed to be delivered. And, you know, I'm sure Dr. Hashimi, once this, you know, his ambulatory surgical facility, state-of-the-art is built, is going to want to see patients right away. So not going to be easy to ask for any kind of shutdowns or closures once he's officially open. So
Absolutely.
We're going to do as much work as we can while we're here. So that was basically a lot just for the decontam area. I guess we'll swing by.
Come into
Clean, sterile.
sterilization. So it's really not much to look at here. You know, just some cabinetry and their sterilizer, which also was a challenge, not just to bring here because of the size and the weight of it, but also installation.
I mean, just to see, like, from the perspective of Ethan, how huge this thing is. So I'm 6'1", and this thing is massive.
Yes.
And what are the ceiling heights you said here?
These are 7'5".
Just like looking at this now, do you think, Wilmar, that we could relocate the diffuser? Like, this is a good spot for it?
So actually, this is a good spot for it, just because this thing right here generates a lot of heat. This will crank the heat in this room from 70 to 95 in just a few minutes. Yes, in just a few minutes. So having that diffuser right above it is definitely going to help a lot in maintaining the temperature in this room.
So once the new units are in and all the equipment, I think you touched on a really good point. Not only that, all the equipment has to be functional, because it's not until you even see how much heat is generated by the third-party equipment that isn't furnished by us, in some cases not even installed by us, then you can really do the TAB report, which is testing, air balancing, because we don't want to just, you know, worry about the CFMs, positive pressure differentials, and then leave it at that. If we calibrate the units, which are very sensitive, and it's all third-party calibration, and even the thermostats are very specific to just this unit that we are fabricating now, because there's gas reheat, there is specific BAS system as well that we're integrating with. You don't want to have to do that multiple times. So another opportunity that we can take while this is happening is have the doctor install and run all their equipment in case anything generates more heat than anticipated. Or I guess, you know, we do have exterior walls with windows. If for whatever reason the thermal loss from the windows also make a difference, we can also time that TAB report to happen during probably you know, before or after the cold season to really get an idea. Because right now it's, you know, just started November. So I would say if we can't do it right now, we probably want to wait until after, you know, February 1st to really lock that in case there's...
Yeah, get better readings, yes, definitely.
In case sun, I mean, what side are we facing here? I mean, this
23rd Street. So we have 23rd Street right out the window.
Got it. Is this, I mean, this would be, I guess, for plan east from the floor plan, but are we actually facing east here, or is that just plan east? I'd be curious, because that would kind of, I mean, I don't see any south-facing clinical areas. So at least, you know, where you get the most sun is not going to be where we also need the most cooling and ventilation and all that. So
yeah, that side of the window, it's east.
Interesting.
Yes.
Well, definitely a lot of considerations that you already put in before.
So we definitely get a lot of sun here on this side in the morning hours.
Yeah. That makes sense.
Yeah.
All right. I guess it's just the peri-op areas.
Yeah. That's
worth checking out.
Well, one thing we might want to talk about here as well with the sterilizer. So there was more than half of this room. There's an area where we weren't able to cold drill because we were not going to be able to pass the piping down below because of ceiling height and ceiling space as well downstairs. So I suggested to do the cold drill all the way to here. So everybody's looking at me like, are you crazy? How are we gonna run that? And I said, well, underneath the cabinetry. And everybody's looking at me again like, you know, are you crazy or what? So
yeah,
guess what?
Take a look at that.
Guess what? You know,
there you go.
So we were able to run the drain line from all the way that corner down into here underneath a cabinet. And there was also a gray area about the size of the drain, so we had run a 2-inch drain as well, which this thing right here dumps, I think it's 10 gallons per minute. of water that this thing dumps. So a 2-inch drain was just not sufficient. You know, the first cycle, it just floated that area there.
Kind of a consideration to make if you're deciding, you know, if like stainless steel cabinets aren't required for certain areas like here, that would be a problem if you did stainless steel, right?
That would be a problem.
It would not be easy to modify for situations
It
like
would
this.
not be easy to modify for the situation that we ran into here. So luckily, this is the type of cabinetry we were able to we used here, and that that gave us the opportunity to make this happen.
So it's not just cost for stainless steel cabinets. Just think about future modifications, modularity, flexibility with how you're like. If it's grade 1, high pressure laminate, Corian tops, they do have healthcare grades, so the level of type of sealant, the porous nature of the solid surface, all get considered. You're not going to have something like a non-sealed granite in a healthcare space. It just wouldn't make sense to be begging for bacteria accumulation. So a lot of things that when you're talking with designers, even custom cabinet vendors, they really have to know healthcare and really have to know what your specific needs are, because couldn't be farther from a one-size-fits-all solution for any component that's going in an ambulatory surgical center. Yeah. Even if it's in our case, it's a hand surgeon who's going to be working out of here, and you can even see their existing clinic that only gets you maybe 10% of the way there. So a lot of forward thinking and clearly some creative problem solving as well to get here.
Absolutely, yes.
That's a great thing to point out.
Yeah. For sure. So I guess we go into our patient care area. So we're here in peri-op area. We have 5 bays, which we also ran into a few issues as far as guidelines, spacing in the bays. There's certain requirements that we were not able to achieve, and that was just because the size of the space that we have here. We try to accommodate some of those dimensions around the beds or the stretchers as good as we could. But when they came in to do the inspection, Department of Health, they came in and they were very meticulous about those dimensions around the stretchers, and we just didn't have the dimensions required, which is 36 inches on either side of the stretcher and 24 inches at the feet of the stretchers.
So hypothetically, this is actually, I know it's the temporary, just it's stored here, but
correct.
This is the stretcher, typically 33 wide and like 80 something deep. So you would need 36 on either side.
On either side, yes, and 24 inches at the bottom of the stretcher.
So I guess just to see the floor plan here. So Wilmar's standing right there. So behind him are the other 3 beds, and that nice little I guess circular part of the plan, that's the corner tower, which is 4 stories high in every corner of the building. So we kind of creatively used this awkward footprint shape for the peri-op bays, because while there are very strict clearance requirements, it's also much easier to use this for peri-op or even PACU if we had post-anesthesia care beds than it would be for like an operating room or even like a staff lounge. Like good lighting and all that, but as far as flow, it would have been very difficult to make this area work for those kind of spaces. So we made it happen. Right here is the nurse station. So the big thing here is, because we have 4 beds, ambulatory surgical center would require a nurse station where the presiding nurse would actually be able to see all of the beds, or at the very least the lights outside of their curtains. So if they need attention and the curtains were closed, it would not take any time at all for a nurse to see that a patient needs attention and alert all the other nurses as well. So pretty legitimate nurse call station system. It had to be calibrated. It was part of the Department of Health's inspection. You have the I guess code blue lights, which are funny enough red, but as I understand them, they're for code blue situations. And talking about those clearances again, we have the FGI report just to make sure we're looking at exactly what we actually need to fix. Exactly what Wilmar said. You need 3 feet between the sides of the beds and adjacent walls. And even here, it even specifies that it's whether it's a bed, a gurney, or even a lounge chair, because for surgical centers that have PACU chairs, like really like reclining leather chairs, those would fall under the same guidelines.
That is correct.
They might not need to be fully reclined in this type of stretcher, but same rules regardless. The clearances are important. So in a state of an emergency, medical gas is not too far away. You know, you can, if you have to hook them up to medical air, like we said, younger patients, more sensitive patients that can't get, shouldn't be getting pure oxygen, anesthesia and WAGD lines. You want that close, but you also want enough space around the stretcher for people to easily, you know, attend to the patient's needs, while also giving them privacy with the curtains. And then after all the curtains are closed, still have a you know, 3-foot clearance for, like, say we'll call a hallway, nurse walking with beds on either side. So a lot of considerations. I think if we had all these requirements, it's funny, I'm just gonna throw this out there. If we had these guidelines, call it a year ago, before we even finished the design of this floor plan, before we got approval from DOB to get the permit, what could we have possibly done to somehow have gotten at least 4 beds with the 3-foot clearance requirements on 3 sides? Or I guess 3 foot on each side, and then you said 24 at the front?
So in this area here that we have, and just because how the shape of the building is, we were not going to be able to get 4 bays in here. That's just impossible. And just because of the shape, and then we have a column right in the middle, you know, on this side, and then we have another column here, and then
on the other side of this wall is the sterile areas. On this side is the nurse station, already pretty much as, I mean, we saw us all 3 standing in the decontaminate, the clean sterile. Those are already as small as you can get them. So truly, I mean, I agree. I figured it'd be a fun thing to ask, but I really don't know what we could have done even if we had these guidelines like given to us from DOB, because again, the Department of Building is where we as the contractors, as a design builder, get our permits, but Department of H, totally separate entity that comes in after. So they don't necessarily review the plans, or at least they don't have to until we are ready to call them out. So would have been nice if we had them on day one, but at the same time, I think it would have just pushed the project back, because there would have had to been a compromise made. Similar to having to, you know, do 2 ORs and 1 procedure room. I think we would have had to like end up with 4 beds, but
3.
Also 3 total.
3 beds, yes.
So we would have to come down to 3, and right now we have.
So the plan now is to, you know, eliminate 2 and modify the 3 that are going to stay, because the way they are right now, it still not meet those clearances. So the 3 that are going to stay would need to be modified and get rid of 2. Also, it gets more interesting because, you know, after we read those guidelines and clearances, there's one that I don't think it's mentioned there, but I read it on their guidelines book, and it's that from stretcher to stretcher you have to have 8 feet of distance. Yes.
And that's from the closest edge?
From the closest edge to the next closest edge of the next stretcher. You got to have 8 feet of space in between stretchers. So that, you know, that made things more complicated, you know, because we could have achieved those clearances within the room, but into the next room, the beds or the stretchers will be closer to each other, which they will also be measuring when they come back.
So I would say this all boils down to, if I could have gone back in time and given myself a little message, or even my first conversation with Dr. Hashemi on, you know, him giving me his plans for his new ambulatory surgical center, is if I could know just a few things, I think it would come down to operatories have to be at least 270 usable square feet.
That's correct.
Procedure rooms, 170 square feet. Doors for operatories and procedure rooms, minimum 41.5, so 42 inch.
42 inch.
We did a 4 foot wide just to be on the safe side. But yeah, 3 foot door, not going to be big enough. And then you get to the peri-op area. Usually based on how many ORs and PRs, procedure rooms that you have, you'll need a certain number of peri-op beds, or at least post-care beds. But also remember that you need a good guideline would be 3 foot on the sides, 24 inch clearance at the front, and 8 foot from stretcher to stretcher from the closest edge.
Yes. So from a different perspective, each peri-op bay should have 64 square feet as a minimum. So a room 8 by 8 would definitely be sufficient for this type of stretchers. But now we also have to take in consideration what size the stretcher is. Because if it's a larger stretcher, then we need to enlarge that bay as well.
Yeah,
so it's a lot of components.
Yeah,
it's a lot of components that take in consideration when building a space like this.
And then think of the where the curtain's going to go. It's not going to be just tight to the stretcher. There's going to be some space between the curtain and the stretcher as well. And then when you locate these the code blue lights, they have to all be visible from wherever the nurse would be sitting. In this case here, so a lot went into the design that we have. But those clearances, I mean, they are, imagine just like OSHA, written in blood. There's a reason they exist. So we try to follow them as closely as possible. A lot more gray areas, I would say. A lot of things were like kind of recommended, not necessarily required when you look at FGI or NFPA 99 or ASHRAE 170. But if you can, get to the maximum, I guess, rating of whatever component it is you're looking at, whether it's air exchanges per hour, clearance between beds, size of the operating rooms, bigger is always better. You can also future-proof. We're still going to try to see what we can do to make any future conversions of an existing procedure room or other to an operatory room in case the doctor expands. I don't see how we're going to get more beds in here ever, but I mean, there's always opportunity to expand to the suites next door, and you want to make that design flexible for those potential expansions, because one thing we love in our industry is repeat clients, and one thing they like, our doctors, our clients, our product owners, is mitigating potential future costs for expansions, because there are when we build these offices, they're immediately seeing patients, they're successful, they want to grow, and we love that. We just don't want to have to do rework that we could have handled in the original build. So yeah, Wilmar gave us a really good rundown on exactly kind of our plan here to modify the existing plans that we had for 5 peri-op beds down to, it seems like we might go down to 3 even to meet those clearance requirements, and then gonna have the next Department of Health inspection. So we're gonna go back to where we started here in the reception area. And then just these were the 2 operatories and the 1 procedure room at the end that we looked at the start of the video. So pretty big office. It's easy to get lost, even no matter how many times I come here. But this essentially is what we're probably just going to finish up with some glass film, because even I have almost accidentally walked through this glass panel here after they cleaned it, and with the kind of patients that might have just come off of anesthesia. We just want to limit as many incidents. So gonna do a hold open, 90-degree hold open closer for the door. Some decorative film here, probably something nice with the doctor's names, the logo, something to the tune of this beautiful bronze sign that we have on these gloss finish porcelain tiles on the walls and the ceiling with wood paneling. Pretty much most of the finishes are done here. Just, doctor's gonna bring some more furniture, set up the computers, and goal here, as we heard Wilmar say, 1 week, we should be ready for inspection again. So it shouldn't be a month from now that the doctor will be seeing patients, and we'll see a grand opening video soon. So thanks for tuning in.